Luke 19, verses 28 through 44 chronicle for us Jesus' triumphant entry into the city of Jerusalem. And something that is so interesting about this account is that the reaction that he received from the people on this day was one that was so much different from the reaction of the people less than 1 week later, when they were standing there before Pilate crying out, "Crucify him," this innocent man who had done nothing wrong. But Jesus' entrance into Jerusalem marks the beginning of the last week in the earthly life and ministry of Jesus. For 3 years he had taught people and had shared the good news. He had healed many that were sick and performed many other miracles that showed that he was no ordinary person, but rather he was someone that was sent from God. As he entered into Jerusalem on this day, Jesus was hailed as a king. But as I mentioned, within just a few days, the public opinion was going to change, manipulated by those who were trying to get rid of Jesus. Jesus' entry, though, into Jerusalem was carefully planned, and we can see this from the instructions that he gave to the disciples and how they carried out those plans. It was an act of courage as he unmistakably laid claim to being the Messiah. Earlier in his ministry, Jesus tended to be more secretive, but it was now time to openly show that he was the Son of God. So riding upon a young donkey, Jesus entered into the city of Jerusalem. And this was a fulfillment of a prophecy which is found in Zechariah chapter 9 and verse 9 that spoke of a king riding into Jerusalem on a young donkey. And it seems almost humorous to think of a grown man riding on a small donkey. But there's great symbolism in this image. It was a sign of peace rather than a sign of war. A triumphant warrior king would ride upon a horse, but a king of peace would ride upon a lowly donkey. It was the time of the Passover. There were great crowds of people there for this festival, and some of those present placed their cloaks on the donkey for Jesus to sit upon. Others spread their cloaks on the road ahead of him, and this was a sign of honor given only to a person of high rank. Matthew and Mark add that some in the crowd also added palm branches as well. The people praised God and proclaimed Jesus to be a king. The religious leaders became upset at their words and tried to prevent them from doing so. And few, if any, of the religious leaders or of the elite of society welcomed Jesus. It was the common, everyday people that filled the streets and praised God for his coming. No, it's not easy for us to fully understand the excitement of that day. It's even more difficult for us to imagine how the crowds could change so drastically from welcoming Jesus as a king to condemning him to be executed as a common criminal just a few days later. Jesus' entry in Jerusalem is recorded in all 4 of the gospel accounts, but only Luke added the additional details that we find in verses 41 through 44. There we see Jesus sad and grieving over the city of Jerusalem. The city had been the center of Jewish life for almost 1,000 years, since the time that it was captured by King David. Solomon had built the original temple there in Jerusalem. The Babylonians had come in and destroyed the city and the temple and had carried the people away into captivity. But Jerusalem and the temple had been rebuilt during the leadership of Ezra and Nehemiah. Herod the Great had renovated much of the city, especially the temple and the area surrounding it. And as Jesus predicted, though, all of this would eventually come to an end when the Romans laid siege to the city of Jerusalem and completely destroyed it in AD 70. Friends, we want to thank you for joining us for our program today, and we pray that God blesses you with a wonderful day, with a great weekend ahead, and we invite you to worship with us this Sunday at Pyburn Street Church of Christ Bible classes at 9, worship at 9:50, evening worship at 6 o'clock.